The Imperial Council chamber was a towering construct of obsidian and silver, stretching high above the capital world of Auric Prime. The room pulsed with the eerie blue glow of anti-gravity conduits, casting long shadows across the assembled warlords, politicians, and admirals of the Galactic Empire. At the center of the chamber, seated on a massive throne carved from the bones of conquered species, was Supreme Chancellor Vereshkul. A monstrous figure, his scaled hide shimmered in the dim light, each ridge and claw exuding power. His voice, deep and resonant, filled the chamber with authority. "Earth," he said, the word dripping with disdain. "A primitive, unremarkable world of mammals. A species barely scratching at the edges of the galactic stage, and yet they refuse to submit." A holographic image of Earth hovered above the council table, displaying the blue-green planet as the Chancellor's claws flexed. The assembled warlords scoffed and muttered among themselves. "This war should have ended before it began," growled High Admiral Xylerkor, his 4 crimson eyes narrowing. "Their military is laughable. Their technology is outdated by centuries. They are nothing. They are stubborn," countered Councillor Dven, a serpentine diplomat who had observed humanity's defiance more closely than most. "They resist. And they have won battles they should not have been able to win." The room fell silent for a moment. The truth was uncomfortable. The Empire had thrown fleet after fleet at humanity, expecting immediate surrender. Instead, they had been delayed, not defeated, but delayed, by human unpredictability, by tactics that defied logic. Chancellor Vereshkul sneered. "Their victories are anomalies. Flukes. We could burn their world to ash at any moment, and yet we give them a choice. We are merciful." A ripple of agreement spread through the council. Mercy. That was the Empire's official position. They weren't conquering Earth. They were offering it a place in the greater order. If Earth refused, then extermination would be its own fault. And now, they would send a message. The prisoner, Earth's shame. A heavy door slid open at the far end of the chamber, and the guards dragged the prisoner forward. The human was restrained in a full-body containment suit, thick metallic restraints binding his wrists, ankles, and neck. His face was obscured behind a dark visor, but even without seeing his eyes, something about his posture was unsettling. Admiral Xyler approached, standing over the captive. "We recovered this one from the penal colony on Luthor 9. According to human records, he was too dangerous to be left free, even among his own kind." The council muttered in amusement. A creature so feared that even his own species had discarded him? Pathetic. "This," Xyler continued, "is our message to Earth. We returned to them a broken creature, one of their own they deemed unfit. A demonstration of their weakness. We will release him, and then we will conquer them. Let them know we hold their fate in our hands." Chancellor Vereshkul leaned forward. "Human. Speak." The prisoner tilted his head slightly, then chuckled. A low, amused sound that sent an unnatural silence through the room. Then he spoke. "Oh, this is going to be fun." A ripple of unease moved through the council. Vereshkul's eyes narrowed. "Explain yourself." The prisoner didn't answer. Instead, he smiled behind his visor, a smile the aliens couldn't see, but felt. Admiral Xyler slammed his fist into the control panel, activating the containment suit's built-in shock system. A powerful energy surge ripped through the prisoner's body, enough to incapacitate most creatures instantly. The human did not scream. He laughed. A slow, deliberate, unnerving laugh. The silence that followed was absolute. The alien warlords shifted uncomfortably. Even the Chancellor's claws tapped against his throne in sudden unease. "Get him off my ship!" Vereshkul growled at last. 2 guards moved forward, gripping the prisoner's restraints. He didn't resist as they dragged him away, still grinning. Within the hour, the Empire's fleet would drop him onto Earth's surface, expecting fear. Expecting rejection. Expecting weakness. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. Earth's real strategy, the return of Gabriel Kane. Deep beneath the Himalayan military complex, the most classified bunker on Earth, a collection of humanity's top officials sat before an expansive digital display. The moment the Empire's ship released the prisoner, alarms flashed across the screen. Commander Helena Rains stood at the center of the war room, arms crossed, eyes locked onto the tracking beacon descending through the stratosphere. A sharp-featured woman with cold intelligence, she hadn't smiled in years, but now, a ghost of one crossed her lips. A young officer at the console swallowed hard. "Ma'am, the Empire just gave him back." Helena's smirk grew. "Poor bastards." A grizzled general turned toward her. "You're sure he's ready for this?" "Ready?" Helena chuckled. "He's been waiting." The Madman's descent. The containment pod struck the Earth's surface with a thunderous impact, cracking the concrete of the abandoned landing zone where humanity's military had arranged for retrieval. A small squad of elite operatives approached the pod cautiously, weapons ready. None of them were sure what to expect. With a hiss of depressurization, the pod's hatch slammed open. Silence. Then, a figure stepped out. His containment suit was still partially intact, but he ripped the restraints from his arms like they were made of paper. The metal bindings that had held him in stasis for years crumbled beneath his grip. As the dust settled, Gabriel Kane took his first deep breath of Earth's air in years. One of the operatives swallowed. "Sir?" Gabriel turned toward him. His eyes, now visible, gleamed with something between amusement and hunger. "They finally let me out," he said. His voice was calm, controlled. But there was something underneath it, something off. The soldiers hesitated. They had heard the stories. Gabriel Kane wasn't just a soldier. He wasn't even just a war criminal. He was a force of nature. The last time Earth had let him off the leash, entire civilizations had fallen. That's why they had locked him away, not because he was a failure, but because he was too good at what he did. And now? Now, the Empire had hand-delivered him back into the world. Gabriel cracked his neck and exhaled. "Right. Let's get started." Helena's voice crackled over the radio. "Welcome back, Kane." "Helena." Gabriel stretched, rolling his shoulders. "Miss me?" "Not even a little," she lied. "I assume you already have a plan?" Gabriel grinned. "Oh," he said. "I have something fun in mind." Final scene. The Empire's mistake is set in motion. Aboard the Imperial flagship, Admiral Zyler stood before his officers, watching the Earth from orbit. One of his subordinates, a younger lieutenant, fidgeted nervously. "Sir?" the lieutenant said hesitantly. "That human, the one we released." Zyler exhaled sharply. "What of him?" "We never asked why they locked him away." Zyler scoffed. "It hardly matters." The lieutenant hesitated. "But what if it does?" Zyler turned, glaring. "He's one human. Insignificant." A warning klaxon suddenly blared across the bridge. The ship's AI flickered. Lights dimmed. A distorted voice echoed through the comms system. A human voice. "Hey there, Admiral," the voice whispered. "You really shouldn't have let me go." Darkness fell. And then, the screaming began. Admiral Zyler staggered back as the bridge of his flagship plunged into darkness. The once gleaming control panels flickered wildly, alarms blaring in every frequency known to the Empire. A human voice had spoken through their secured comms, a voice that should have been impossible to hear inside the most heavily defended ship in the fleet. "What the hell is happening?" Zyler growled. His officers scrambled to regain control. Screens were glitching, displaying human symbols and static, and the ship's AI was silent. Then, a new voice, cold and unrecognizable, replaced the system's standard interface. "Hello, Admiral." Zyler's mandibles tensed. "Who is this?" "Oh, come on. You already know." Something about the way the voice dragged out the words made the air in the bridge feel thick, like the room had suddenly become smaller, suffocating. Zyler clenched his fists. "We released you as an act of mercy." A low chuckle. "Oh, you did, didn't you? You poor bastards." The ship shuddered violently, throwing officers to the floor. A technician screamed. We're losing control of our security systems. Xyler spun toward his lieutenant. How did he get access? The lieutenant, trembling, barely managed to whisper. Sir, he's inside. Xyler froze. Then, before he could even issue a command, the lights came back on, but this time, they weren't alone. Standing in the center of the bridge, where no alarms had sounded, where no doors had opened, was a man in black tactical gear, head tilted slightly, smiling. Gabriel Kane. First blood. The bridge exploded into chaos. Xyler lunged for his weapon, but Kane was faster. The crack of a single suppressed gunshot echoed through the chamber, and Xyler's right arm jerked backward, a hole punched clean through his forearm. The alien roared in agony, stumbling. His officers tried to draw their own weapons, but Gabriel was already moving. He disappeared into motion, a blur of precise, practiced destruction. A knife slashed across a throat, arterial blood sprayed across control panels. A second officer fired, too slow. Kane caught the barrel, redirected the shot into another alien's chest, then used the recoil to break the shooter's arm. Xyler staggered back, clutching his injured limb, watching in horror as his bridge became a slaughterhouse. Within 15 seconds, Gabriel Kane was the only one left standing. The silence that followed was worse than the violence. Xyler panted, bleeding, stunned, staring at the bodies of his crew. Gabriel wiped his blade on an officer's uniform, then looked up at Xyler. His expression wasn't angry, wasn't hateful. It was bored. You call this an empire? Kane asked, rolling his shoulders. I expected better. Xyler gritted his teeth. You think you've won? We will send a fleet. Gabriel stepped forward, gripping Xyler's throat, slamming him back against the console. Oh, Admiral, he murmured. You still don't get it. Kane tilted his head, considering his next words. Then he grinned, a slow, terrifying expression. I'm already in your fleet. And then Xyler realized. This wasn't just an infiltration. This was a coordinated attack. The hidden war begins. Across the Galactic Empire, ships, stations, and command centers suddenly lost control of their systems. Sabotage had spread like a virus, disabling key defenses, scrambling internal communications, locking officers inside their own command rooms. Human commando teams emerged from the shadows, striking precise, surgical blows at the heart of the Empire's infrastructure. This wasn't a war anymore. This was an execution. On Vorik Prime, Chancellor Vereshko watched as his defense networks failed one by one. His palace went into emergency lockdown, not because of an external threat, but because something inside had triggered the alarms. His war council screamed at each other, trying to make sense of it. Then, the lights flickered. A single message appeared on every holoscreen in the chamber. A message written in fluent Galactic standard, but in a human dialect. The Madman walks. Your time is up. Vereshko's claws tightened around his throne. For the first time in his long, merciless rule, he felt fear. Gabriel's final message. Back on the flagship, Admiral Xyler gasped as Kane tightened his grip. The Admiral's mandibles twitched, his body shaking, as he stared into Kane's eyes. No hatred. No rage. Just calm, patient, amused violence. You are a monster, Xyler whispered. Gabriel smiled. Yeah, he said softly. That's why you shouldn't have let me go. He dropped Xyler, turning toward the bridge's main console. With a single command, he transmitted one final message across the Empire. A video feed. His face. Staring. Smiling. Waiting. And then, he said the words that would shatter the Galactic Empire. I'm coming for you. Then, the transmission cut. And across the galaxy, the Empire trembled. The Galactic Empire was unraveling. Gabriel Kane had turned their war machine against itself. Communications collapsed, fleets were stranded without orders, and paranoia spread like wildfire. Yet, amidst the confusion, the true horror was only beginning. Gabriel wasn't just breaking the Empire. He was hunting. The fall of Vorik Prime. Chancellor Vereshko stood in the center of his fortified war room, staring at the hollow map of his empire. Entire fleets were going dark. Armies lost contact. Key defense systems were failing, one by one. Impossible, he muttered. We are the dominant power in this galaxy. We have ruled for millennia. A military officer, trembling, spoke. Chancellor, the attacks are coordinated. Every strike, every sabotage, this isn't a human rebellion. He swallowed. This is a purge. The Chancellor turned, mandibles clicking. Where is Kane? No one answered. A cold realization settled over the council. No one knew where Gabriel was. Inside the lion's den. Vereshko's palace was the most heavily fortified structure in the Empire. Walls of reinforced red metal, energy shields that could withstand planetary bombardment, an elite guard trained from birth. And yet, despite all that, it was silent. Too silent. Vereshko turned to his head of security. Check the surveillance feeds. The officer hesitated. Sir, they're offline. The Chancellor's breath hitched. No. That was impossible. Then, from somewhere deep inside the palace, an explosion rocked the ground. A message flashed across the last functioning holoscreen. Knock, knock. For the first time in his rule, Vereshko felt hunted. Gabriel Kane arrives. The palace was in chaos. Elite guards rushed through the corridors, weapons raised, scanning every shadow. And then, the screaming started. Gunfire. Bodies dropping. Something was inside. In the security bunker, officers desperately tried to trace the intruder. One officer gasped, pointing at the remaining sensors. He's not breaching from the outside. Another explosion. He's already here. The bunker doors slammed shut. The lights flickered. And then, the screaming began inside the room. The throne room showdown. Vereshko's last guards stood between him and the entrance, blasters trembling in their hands. Boom. 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 The sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed through the hallway outside. Then silence. A single knock. Then the doors slammed open. Gabriel Kane strode into the throne room. His black combat armor was smeared with blood, his weapons still smoking. And in his eyes, calm, patient destruction. Vereshko raised his chin. You dare enter my halls? Gabriel smirked. Oh, buddy. I didn't enter. He gestured around. I own this place now. The Chancellor snarled. You're one man. You cannot break an empire alone. Gabriel tilted his head. Yeah? Look outside. The palace shook. From the massive throne room windows, the sky was on fire. Human strike teams were overrunning the capital, starships falling like burning comets. The empire was collapsing. Vereshko's mandibles clicked in desperation. You can't win this war. Gabriel stepped forward, drawing his pistol, pressing it to the Chancellor's forehead. Oh, Veresh. Kane smiled. This wasn't a war. This was an execution. A message to the galaxy. The fall of Vorik Prime was broadcast across the galaxy. Every remaining sector watched as the mighty Chancellor knelt before a single human. Gabriel Kane's voice echoed through every communication channel. Your empire is dead. You just don't know it yet. Surrender now, or I'll burn the rest of it to the ground. The galaxy held its breath. And in the silence, the Galactic Empire began to fall. The Galactic Empire was shattered. Its fleets scattered, its leaders dead or in hiding, its capital reduced to smoldering ruins. Gabriel Kane had done the impossible, not just winning a war, but erasing an empire from existence. But he wasn't finished yet. Not until the galaxy understood one simple truth: humanity wasn't just here to survive. They were here to rule. The last stronghold, the final stand of the empire. Across the remains of the empire, panic spread like wildfire. Governors, warlords, and military leaders scrambled for power, each trying to claim what was left. But in a hidden fortress on the distant planet Drakvaris, the last remnants of the Imperial High Command had gathered. A final resistance. Vereshko's former second-in-command, Overlord Zervas, stood before a desperate council of alien generals. His mandibles clicked anxiously. We must strike back. The humans must be crushed before they rise any further. A hologram flickered on. A trembling officer appeared. Sir, he's already here. The room went silent. And then, the lights flickered. They had no time to run. Gabriel Kane's reckoning. The fortress erupted in chaos. Security turrets spun wildly, shooting at shadows. Soldiers fired at nothing, panic overtaking their discipline. Then came the explosions. Boom. 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 Walls collapsed. Corridors crumbled. And from the dust and smoke, Gabriel Kane emerged. No words. No speeches. Just cold, calculated execution. One by one, the Empire's final warlords fell. Shot. Stabbed. Silenced. Until only Zervas remained. The final confrontation. Zervas stumbled backward, his claws trembling. You're just a man! Gabriel holstered his gun. Stepped forward. And you're just a bug with delusions of power. Zervas snarled, lunging with a plasma blade. Gabriel caught it mid-swing. With a brutal twist, he snapped the alien's arm. Zervas screamed. Gabriel leaned in, his voice calm. Do you know why your empire fell? Zervas spat blood. You, humans, are insane. Gabriel smiled. Wrong. We're inevitable. A single gunshot ended the empire. A galaxy changed forever. The war was over. The Galactic Empire, the oldest, mightiest civilization in the known universe, was no more. News spread fast. Worlds that had once feared humanity now sent emissaries, pledging loyalty. Former imperial vassals surrendered, begging for mercy. And at the heart of it all, Gabriel Kane stood victorious. On the ruins of Vorik Prime, he delivered his final message. The age of the Empire is dead. The age of humanity has begun. And the galaxy trembled in response. The last scene, a smirk and a warning. On a distant world, in a darkened chamber, a hidden council of alien rulers watched in silence. One of them, a reptilian strategist, clicked his tongue. The humans, they were never weak, were they? An elder, ancient and wise, shook his head. No. He turned to the others. They were simply waiting. Across the stars, as fleets burned and new empires rose, one thing became clear. The Galactic Empire had awakened a monster. And now, humanity was unleashed. Final words. As Gabriel Kane stood on the ruins of the old empire, watching the fires die down, his communicator buzzed. A voice, calm, amused. So, Kane, what's next? Gabriel smirked, adjusting his gloves. We build. The screen went black. The galaxy would never be the same.